The royal family is said to be considering legal action, among other things, after its reputation has once again been brought into disrepute over baseless and unparticularized allegations of racism, dating all the way back to the now infamous interview between Meghan Markle and Oprah Winfrey, where, if you recall, she spoke of conversations that she said took place over what she described as concerns as to how dark the baby's skin was going to be even before it was born. Here's a reminder of what she said in that interview.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There's several conversations.
There's a conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh.
Now, it's fairly accepted that the widespread response to that interview was somewhat negative. Many people have criticised the interview itself and many of the comments made, including myself. Many of us don't believe that interview should have taken place, and certainly the comments made within it should not have been made. If someone makes an allegation very broadly without naming any one individual, then it leaves the average viewer with a fairly negative impression of the entire family. But these allegations have surfaced once again in a book called Endgame, written by Mr. Omid Scobie, nicknamed by some as Harry and Meghan's mouthpiece. Only this now has a bit of a bizarre twist, in that somehow the Dutch version of the book named two royal individuals with whom these conversations were said to have taken place. Mr. Scobie was quick to say that he doesn't speak Dutch, had never seen a copy of the book with names in it, and he insists that he didn't put any names in any edition of this book. And yet somehow the Dutch version did hit the shelves for a short period of time for sale to the general public with these names intact. In an interview prior to publication of this book, Mr. Scobie himself said that he feared legal action if he identified any individuals that were said to have made such remarks. Although in the book itself, he writes that the names were disclosed in private letters exchanged between King Charles and Meghan after the Oprah interview. Scobie quite rightly confirmed that he understood that books are held to a much higher standard than periodicals or a newspaper, and that if you write anything in a book, particularly allegations of this nature, then you need to be able to prove them should the need arise. Allegations or even imputations of racism are considered inherently defamatory, because, obviously, they would cause serious damage to a person's reputation. They are a form of prejudice and discrimination, and very often have a criminal connotation attached. In an interview, Mr. Scobie said that it's not for him to name any individuals that were said to have made such remarks, and that he said that it was surprised that it was these two people. And yet, as I say, somehow two names appeared in the Dutch version of this book. This was initially put down to a translation error and then later chalked up as just a bit of an error. But as a lawyer, I frankly do not accept either of these excuses. A name is highly unlikely, if not impossible, to appear in the translated version of a book if it didn't appear in the original, which Mr. Scobie insists it didn't. Likewise, it's not likely to be an error, unless of course the translators of the book had copies of notes to hand with those names in it, which again, it seems Mr. Scobie denies. But these names had to have originated from somewhere. They either originated from Mr. Scobie in either his notes or the original version of the book, or they've been created to be put into the translated version of the book somewhere in between. But either way, I don't accept that this was released by accident. And the reason that I give you that opinion is that every book will have a number of editors involved and even legal teams, particularly for books like this, before the book is published. And I would expect that to be the case for any translated copy of the book, because it would be equally damaging if any version of the book had incorrect information. So many people in the comments section and by email and on Twitter have asked me several questions. Is there a possible claim here? And if so, against whom? Is it likely that a claim will be brought? And thirdly, is it likely that Piers Morgan is in any trouble for having named the two individuals who were named in this book? Let's take those in turn. The first one is absolutely, yes, in my opinion, there is a potential case for defamation here. Because as I said, any allegations or even imputations of racism are inherently defamatory, because any form of racism has connotations of prejudice and discrimination and is inherently defamatory, and it is very often linked with allegations of a criminal nature. So if there is the very real potential of a claim in defamation, against whom might that claim be brought? Well, the first port of call is obviously the original author of that book, in this case, Mr. Omid Scobie. Although he claims to have had no knowledge of the Dutch version of the book, doesn't speak Dutch, and didn't put the names in any such book, he would be the person that would have to prove that that was the case. Because the author usually will have overall responsibility for the contents of any book, including any translations, because that's likely to be contained within the contractual agreements with the publishers. But in this scenario, publishers are also not off the hook. Publishers can and very often are sued for the contents of a book if they contain defamatory statements, if they knew or ought to have known that the book contained defamatory statements and they published it anyway. Likewise, anyone that was involved in the printing of the book, for example, if they were negligent in the printing and didn't take steps to prevent its publication. And then finally, anyone that distributes or retails the book, and even anyone else that repeats or republishes those defamatory statements. So taking the questions out of order, that brings us to Piers Morgan. Many people have asked whether Piers Morgan is in any trouble for repeating the names that are contained within this book, because that might be seen by some to be repeating those allegations. Well, in my view, I think Piers is perfectly fine here, because Piers Morgan made absolutely perfectly clear that he doesn't believe these allegations. He believes they are entirely baseless and that nobody should believe them. And frankly, that's the view that I take, because none of the allegations have had any factual basis whatsoever. There is no reason to believe these allegations, and therefore I don't personally think that Piers Morgan is in any trouble whatsoever. But that is backed up by coming back a step to discuss whether or not it's likely that there'll be legal action that follows this. Now, in all, I think probably not. Not least of which because the royal family is known for not allowing itself to easily get embroiled in such matters, but also because it's likely to drag the royal family through a very public spectacle, which they will probably want to avoid. But I understand from what I've read that they are being urged to sue and to consider all options. It's also been said that Harry and Meghan are being urged to consider suing Omid Scobie for a breach of privacy or breach of confidence. Now, just a final word on Piers Morgan's decision to disclose who it was that was identified in this book. Now, on the one hand, as I said, repetition or republication of a defamatory statement may well be defamatory in and of itself. However, in situations like this, it is likely, in my view, to be both fair comment and in the public interest to discuss the wrongdoing of the publication of the Dutch version of the book containing those names, to inform the public of a matter of public concern, and to defend the reputation of the royal family. And quite frankly, I support what he said. But do let me know what you think in the comments section below. Let me know what you think about this whole situation, which stemmed from Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah Winfrey. And of course, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe. That really does help my channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching.